Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air.
Magnificent fireflies and glowworms? Today on Advanced. Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another Advanced Studio Classroom. My name is Simon, and you are joining me in the studio today for the third part of our March Animals article. It is titled The Fabulous Firefly, and if you just heard the introduction, you will have heard me forget one of the names that we use for fireflies. This is a perfect example of how tremendously English can vary from region to region. In this article, on our first day, we introduced the idea that fireflies, which of course are these little bugs that kind of glow at night as they fly around, have another name. They're also called lightning bugs, which, is a term I have heard, but am so unfamiliar with as to not be able to remember it during the introduction. And instead, I said glowworms, which apparently are related.
They are related.
But don't fly. So they're not fireflies, they're fireworms, I suppose. Nonetheless, there you go. Sometimes it's hard to focus on your interregional language skills. Joining me in the studio today as we continue talking about these magnificent creatures, we have Rhonda. Welcome back, Rhonda.
It's great to be here, and I think discussing those different names relates to our reading here, sparking the imagination. All those names are creative ways to talk about this biological creature. So a lightning bug is just a fun nickname.
Yeah. Christine, you're here too?
I sure am.
It's good to have you here because you're probably also not particularly familiar with that whole lightning bug thing.
Yeah, no, I am not.
Yeah.
I need to teach you a little song.
Oh, no.
Well, I won't sing it, but
Do it. Sing it.
Firefly, 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 lighting up the evening sky.
Is that it?
Let me
or
take
is
it
that
to
just
a high.
the first
No, it goes,
line?
Firefly, firefly, lighting up the evening sky. First you're here, then you're there, blinking everywhere. Blinking,
nice.
blinking, yes. So as you can
I think
see,
that their
fireflies.
part probably rhymes with underwear, and it's probably been a delightful song
When
for
you
little
fly
boys
your
all
little
across the
light, it
Midwest for many
shines through-
years.
Well, a lot of poems in English, fly, sky, night, light. Those are some of the favorite words to rhyme. And Simon is looking at me. Simon, with his science background, is looking at this English major with
I have a
grandchildren.
6-year-old son.
No, you're right, and I have
that's
grandchildren.
I can hear underwear in this song.
Yes, yes.
Is what I'm saying.
And I'm
There's a great passion. Like kids seem to learn about rhyming words somewhere around kindergarten, grade 1.
Yes.
They actually sort of study it and practice it because English can have a very lyrical tone. Like, I don't know if our listeners have sort of dug into the cultural aspects of things like alliteration, but I would imagine that when you're studying English as a foreign language, you're so focused on memorizing vocabulary and grammar patterns that you don't so much think of the creative and aesthetic aspects of English. But alliteration, which basically means words start with the beginning sounds. They have all kinds of effects on English. Like at one point, I was told the idiom, a stitch in time saves. Do you know what the rest of it is?
No, I don't.
Well,
9.
Yeah, that's right. A stitch in time saves 9. And it basically means if you act quickly, you save yourself more work that you would have to do if you delayed to do this. The idea of the stitch here being like you sew a stitch in a rip. And if you do it as soon as the rip is made, you only have to make one stitch. But if you wait, the rip gets bigger and bigger, and then it's more work. That's the idea. But I was told once I think I was in a linguistics class, I was told that basically in English, certain sounds go together more commonly than other sounds. And so the reason phrases like that are easy for us to remember is that if you're a native English speaker, you know the only 2 word options that are lower than 10 for numbers are 5 and 9. And 9 is the bigger one. So that's why we would choose it, because it emphasizes the difference between 1 stitch and 9
Right.
stitches. So, like, why not a stitch in time saves 7? It just doesn't sound right, right? A stitch in time saves
Time,
5,
9.
maybe. A stitch in time saves 9. It's got a lyrical, like a musical quality to it. So there's this whole other aspect to English here. Hopefully, you will enjoy hearing us use our lyrical singing voices as we continue our discussion
but
today.
So I just want to throw out there to our listeners, if you'd like to learn more about this aspect of English, let us know, because I'm looking around the table, especially over here at Christine, we like to talk about the beauty of words. So I'm putting that pitch in there, and I just discovered that I have a kindred spirit in Simon,
Yeah.
who loves the aesthetic aspects of our
Well,
language.
I will say, listeners, here at Studio Classroom, we have developed a program that helps you learn a little bit about like English poetry. It does cover alliteration and rhyme, various other things. We've used it in the past as a summer camp for students. But we could maybe think about turning it into an online course. If you are interested in that, post that on the social media
Let
and
us know.
demand it.
That's right.
Please do, because
Yeah.
we would love to bring that back.
Yeah, what a good idea. So let's jump into our first reading, friends. We're familiar with the fireflies, right? We've learned that basically fireflies are a thing that is a big part of regional culture in America. It's a very nostalgic sort of thing. People grew up with fireflies at night. We learned that sometimes they go by different names. We learned that they are under threat from a changing environment, both because of urban development and light pollution, and because of pesticides. But I suppose I could add to that not just a both, but also the third thing would be, we talked about climate change affecting them. Today we're going to move on with this lesson, the third and final part of the lesson. We're going to do 2 readings. If you have your March magazine, open it up and join us as we read together now.
Sparking the imagination. Beyond their ecological and medical value, Fallon said, fireflies are a cultural and aesthetic touchstone. They've really been valued and celebrated for centuries. They're the object of all these different types of artwork, writing, poetry, and even plays, dances, and festivals, she said. I think there's something about flashing fireflies in particular that really sparks the imagination and gives people this feeling of wonder and awe and a connection to the environment that a lot of other insects don't provide. Just as the popularity of giant pandas, elephants, koalas, and gorillas has made them icons of conservation campaigns and earned them the title of charismatic megafauna, insects such as flashing fireflies have a special appeal. Maybe it's because of their ability to evoke nostalgic memories, or because their lights twinkle gently enough for children to put aside fears of insects. Regardless, fireflies are cherished by many and can inspire curiosity and care for other insects, animals, and plants. You can protect a whole community and all the organisms that live in it by focusing on those really charismatic organisms, McNeil said.
All right, so sparking something. What are you doing when you're sparking something? I mean, you're not just lighting it on fire, Christine. What are you doing with it?
Well, usually when we talk about a spark, we talk about a spark that then causes a wildfire or spreads. So sparking the imagination is like putting it on fire.
I suppose
and
we
spreading
should
it.
say first what a spark is. It's like when you strike a piece of metal on a piece of metal, like say, for
Yes.
example, a lighter. You know, like a cigarette lighter, you have to turn that little wheel
Yes,
and it
that-
makes some
that's the
little
spark.
fire bits. Those are sparks. And so those are the noun sparks. If you're making those sparks, you are sparking, right? And so you're basically starting something.
Your
like
hope
you
is
said.
to cause something to catch fire.
But how are you starting imagination here? You're sparking the imagination. What is that?
Well-
like you could spark a movement, spark a group of people to take action. But what is sparking imagination?
I think it's waking up the imagination.
So it's like giving you the seed of an
Yeah.
idea. Listen to
Yeah.
how beautifully we're speaking now that we've
Look
been
at these
talking about
metaphors.
this.
Well, speaking of beautiful, this is where the writer of this article is showing a good command of the language and a good command of the themes. We're talking about a little bug that lights up quickly, blinks, flashes, and so that bug literally has a spark of light. Now this article is going to talk about how we really love that as humans, and it gets us thinking about wonderful things in our imagination. So it's a clever use of a common English idiom that sparks my imagination, but tying it in, obviously, with our subject of a bug that literally has a spark.
So as a quick review for those who may be joining us for the first time for this third part, basically we have learned that fireflies have an ecological value. They are like tiny bug tigers. They hunt other creatures for much of their life cycle, often unwanted insects. So they control the population of other insects. They also have some medical value. Specifically, they said they were useful in medical imaging to match disease and for food safety stuff. There may be other examples as well. But what they're saying now is they have cultural and aesthetic value. They use this term in particular, touchstone, and a touchstone is basically a point of reference. So it's like something that everybody recognizes that you can sort of base something else on. In this case, culturally and aesthetically, aesthetics has to deal with beauty. So basically, they're important for the culture and they add beauty to the world in a way that everyone kind of recognizes. They've been valued for a long time, Christine. How long?
It says they've been celebrated and valued for centuries. That means hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah. And they've been the object, I suppose you could even say the subject, eh?
Yes.
As in people have used them as the thing that is being featured in all kinds of different types of artwork, writing, poetry, and even plays, dances, and festivals. Now, I am laughing, listeners, because I would love to see a stage show where everyone is dressed like a firefly dancing. Sounds like an excellent Friday night to me, but I am getting older, so I don't know if that's really a great idea. They say, I think there's something about flashing fireflies in particular that really sparks the imagination. So there we go back to that sparking and gives people a feeling of wonder and awe and a connection to the environment.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I'm trying to get it under control because of the image you just put in my mind, the imagination that you sparked.
A group of 40-year-old men dressed as fireflies doing ballet.
About it too much. Let's not think too much about where that light is.
And blinking beautifully.
Isn't this a pun to spark the imagination? It's part of a fun. Help me out here.
There you go. Well, nonetheless, they have attracted a lot of attention culturally, I suppose that's what we'd say. They do note that they have created this feeling of wonder and awe. I will say that is how I felt the first time I saw them, particularly in large number. Like not just one of them. It's like when you're walking and you see one, people are like, oh, look, it's a firefly. When people gather around to see them, they do attract attention because even though there's something that is relatively common, there's something that stands out as unique and special, right? There's something not quite normal about them, the way they glow. And so they've obviously inspired us.
It's true. They can also inspire absolute dread and fear, though. Really? My memory of when I was 15 and saw a firefly, I was in my room having a sleepover with a friend, and suddenly this eerie green light is moving and shining, and then it disappears. And then it reappears, and I was like, what is that? It's not a person. It's not a flashlight. It's this weird greenish yellow light. And I had to turn on the light, and then I discovered it was a firefly. But for that little bit of time, I was actually terrified. So
interesting.
And then it attacked you.
And then it
like
attacked
a
me
Bengal tiger.
Well, and then you see the bug another part of the wonder. You see the bug and it's very ordinary looking when it's not lit up.
Yes.
So it does make a wonderful subject. I keep saying this for a children's book.
Yes.
There's a famous one called Sam the Firefly who writes messages in the sky. I'm going to get that for Simon. When's your birthday, Simon?
Oh, it's in. Oh, I better not say. I don't want a flood of gifts pouring in from listeners. Listeners, you don't have to give
Well,
me
I was gonna
anything.
take
Don't
you-
feel
I
too bad.
Or we could let's buy Simon a ticket to the performance called The
Fireflies
Firefly.
and You, a stage show.
Let's do a show.
Maybe we should put that on. Maybe Studio Classroom should organize that.
Starring
We sometimes do performances.
Simon the Lightning Bug.
There you go. Listeners, as we continue with our reading, we find that the fireflies are special in the same sort of way that giant pandas, elephants, koalas, and gorillas are. Basically, that popularity has made those creatures what they call here icons of conservation campaigns. What is an icon, Christine?
An icon is something that people look up to that represent something and have meaning to people.
So we readily recognize it. I suppose a good example of that would be there's a charity called the World Wildlife Fund that uses the panda.
Right.
Right? And so when you see that logo, you sort of know it's associated with environmental issues. They go on to say that basically these large creatures we've talked about have earned the title charismatic megafauna. And I know they're talking about these large creatures, not the fireflies here, because of that word megafauna. Mega, of course, means big. And I mentioned a little earlier, maybe it was yesterday, flora and fauna, which is a sort of a scientific, technical way of saying plants and animals. So flora is plants, fauna is animals. So megafauna are big animals, and they attract a lot of attention. But insects such as flashing fireflies also have a special appeal, even though they're smaller. Now, why do you suppose that is? It tells us in the next paragraph, Christine.
Maybe it's because of their ability to evoke nostalgic memories. Yeah, so again, we talked about this earlier. Nostalgic is this idea of maybe something sweet, something memorable. It brings you back to a different time. And so because they may have been a part of your childhood, when you see them, they make you think of happier times or of times gone by.
It says their lights twinkle gently enough for children, some children anyway, to put aside fears of insects. Other people may be terrorized by them, as you were, Christine.
As I was.
Regardless.
Do you want me to sing another song? Twinkle, twinkle, little star. I love that word twinkle. Twinkle is a great word. I just wanted to point that out
there you
because
go.
it's like blink, wink,
Oh, it's true.
twinkle, but we don't have twink as
Their
a verb.
lights twinkle. That's right. They're being
good word.
compared to stars there. Yeah. It tells us regardless, fireflies are cherished by many and can inspire curiosity and care for other insects, animals, and plants. So they kind of inspire us to be better versions of ourselves, I suppose. It says you can protect a whole community and all the organisms that live in it by focusing on those really charismatic organisms. So, people might not be too concerned about saving the cockroaches, but they will be concerned about saving the fireflies.
Unless they go to that show with the grown men dressed like fireflies, so that could backfire.
Unless you terrify them.
That's right.
This, of course, brings us to our second reading, friends. Let's do that together now.
How to help. Firefly lovers can help preserve the insects by maintaining native plant species in backyards instead of trying to keep perfectly manicured lawns treated with weed killers and pesticides. One thing that I like to do is, in the fall, when I rake my leaves, I leave them in my yard, McNeil said. I rake them around the edges so that the firefly larvae have a place to overwinter and forage in the spring. Turning off lights at nighttime can also help fireflies identify potential mates more easily. Participating in citizen science projects such as the Xerxes Society's Firefly Atlas can improve scientific knowledge about where firefly species are abundant and where they are not. Take your kids or your nephews, even a friend, maybe go out for a date, take other people with you, and do this firefly survey. Or have you and Grandma go sit in the backyard and talk about fireflies for 10 minutes, McNeil said.
Okay, so listeners, this section is for you if you count yourself as a firefly lover, someone who loves fireflies. What can you do to help these insects out, Rhonda?
You can preserve the insects by maintaining native plant species in your yard. So plants that originally grow, not plants that you've brought from somewhere else to put in your backyard. Instead of trying to keep fake or perfectly manicured lawns. We talked earlier just among ourselves about people having big lawns. Big yards is another phrase, especially in parts of the United States, small towns. So our listeners may be unfamiliar with that. Am I right or wrong, Christine?
Well, I don't think it's very common where we are here. But yeah, in a lot of places in North America, people have these big yards or lawns that have grass covering it, and they cut it perfectly. And if you have a beautiful green yard that you water all the time, that's a point of pride for some people. But there is a movement now towards a more natural landscape. So even with my property in Canada, we try very much to have native plants and not to mow the lawn, because we want it to be a space where native species can hide and live and grow. So I think that's what they're talking about, as well as not using weed killers or pesticides, not trying to kill off the natural things that live in your land space.
I'm a little confused here, friends. I thought manicures were things you got in a beauty salon, not in a backyard.
That's a good point.
I guess another...
What are manicures exactly?
Manicures are when you get your fingernails done, so they
Carefully
file them
groomed.
and groom them and, put
Carefully
nail
tended.
polish. Yes.
Fingernails.
Exactly.
It's something
Or in
of a-
this case, carefully tended lawns.
Yes.
The
All
word
the
manna
grass.
is hand, right? So this is a word that you wouldn't usually use to talk about your garden, but it is common now in
Kept-
English to say,
kept
wow, that's
beautiful.
really manicured.
Yes.
Carefully tended,
In good
so it
condition.
remains beautiful.
Yes.
So there were a few key words in there. Obviously, the native plant species are little glowworms and fireflies and lightning bugs are not eating the plants, but they might be eating little worms that are eating the plants, right?
The
So there's sort of
and all that.
a natural need for those native plants. They also say that your yard should not be treated with weed killers and pesticides. We learned that that was one of the things that was killing the bugs also, right? These chemicals. So we go on, we get a quote. One thing that I like to do in the fall when I rake my leaves, I leave them in my yard. Now, why on earth would you leave the leaves in your yard, Rhonda?
Because it's material that can decompose and cultivate the insect, the firefly larva.
Yeah, they can sort of shelter in them, gives them a place to hide. Leaves can be quite warm, actually, being in a pile of leaves.
Anything that composts.
Yeah. Well, if you, I don't know if you've ever turned over a compost heap. A compost heap, listeners, is just where you put all your food and plant waste from your house so that it rots into a fertilizer kind of soil that you can use in your garden. You have to turn it over from time to time so that the less rotted things go to the bottom and the more rotted things come to the top. And when you do, you will find it is warm even in the winter. So this process generates heat. And so you're basically leaving leaves so that the fireflies have a safe place.
Warm, cozy place to live over the
Yeah.
winter.
That's a nice idea. Additionally, remember we had problems with light pollution. And so, Christine, we have another solution here. What can you do?
They want you to turn off your lights at night. Make sure that it's actually dark outside, because that way the fireflies can shine their light and find their mates. Otherwise, it's difficult for them to mate.
Their little lights are easily drowned out.
Exactly.
They also have a citizen science project they're telling us about here. The Xerces Society Firefly Atlas can improve scientific knowledge. Now, an atlas, of course, is like a book of maps. And so presumably what they're doing here is mapping where fireflies are found. So people are sort of seeing fireflies and logging them into this thing so that they know how many fireflies are in which places. And they actually give us some advice on how to work with this atlas. They say you can take your kids or your nephews, perhaps even your nieces, though they don't say that, even a friend, maybe go out for a date, take other people with you, and do what?
Do this firefly survey. A verb would be survey.
Yeah.
Survey where the fireflies are. Something informal. You're not part of a scientific project.
Yeah, presumably you're just going to answer some questions about the fireflies around you while they are around you, or that are not around you when they are not around you. I'm not entirely sure. You could also have you and your grandma go sit in the backyard and talk about fireflies for 10 minutes. Now, why would you do that? Is that for the atlas?
No, not necessarily. You can talk and find out from your grandmother whether there used to be more fireflies in your area. You might be able to learn something, and perhaps you can, I guess collect anecdotal evidence like they used at the beginning of the chapter or this segment to figure out whether or not they are actually coming back or disappearing or what's happening
Maintaining
with
the
them.
cultural link to the firefly culture.
And I noticed the word backyard is used because certainly in the town I'm from, sitting in the back grassy place, the backyard is that more private place in an American home where the lights aren't so bright and you might see fireflies.
That's exactly it. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us for this Advanced Studio Classroom. We hope you'll join us again soon for another. Until then, I'm Simon,
I'm Rhonda.
I'm Christy.
saying goodbye for now.
Goodbye.